Aerodrome is probably the best momentum trade in crypto right now. And what we've seen is a really, really important and I would say fairly rare and probably going to become increasingly rare situation with Aerodrome, because we've seen it actually start to stutter out and take a little bit of a dip, which with a chart like this and with a coin like this, and given all the narratives and news that are coming for it, I think these are going to become rarer and rarer over time and probably become less and less of as large of dips over time. And so what we've just seen has been a really, really big gift, and even kind of what we're seeing right now. We have seen a recent move in the market, so Aerodrome definitely has jumped a little bit, and we can actually jump right into the crypto bubbles showing that. We can see a 13% move on Aerodrome really just happening within the past probably hour, maybe hour and a half. So it's been moving really, really strong. But what we're seeing from Aerodrome, as I mentioned, is one of the strongest kind of momentum trades that I think we've seen. If we go ahead and take a look at price, we can see on the daily what we've kind of seen coming out of it. This has been a multi-month long trend. You can see even recently it's really started to pick up. And if we look back, even just over the past couple of days, I can drop it down to the hourly chart just so we can take a look here. But you'll be able to see what we saw coming in, which is really, really strong moves to the upside, continuing to move. And then this was kind of the first time over the span of a couple of days. Actually, I guess this was just only about 3 or 4 days that we saw this move coming down. We actually saw a move from about $1.45 down to about $1.20. This would have been a really, really great time to be entering into the Aero trade, just given what we've seen going on in the past. Of course, past gains is not any indication of future success, but given kind of some of the narrative things that we are seeing and some of the metrics and the fundamental items that we are seeing coming out of Aerodrome, I think this would have been a massive and fantastic time to get in if you weren't in already. Of course, you do need to be making your own decisions, though. I do not offer financial advice. These are just my opinions based on what I'm seeing in the market. I could be right, I could be wrong. But as you can see, within the past hour, just absolutely rocketing here and continuing to go even as we speak. It's been, as I mentioned, Aerodrome is a crazy, crazy momentum trade here. But we can see, really strong move, essentially primarily fueled off of the possibility of rate cuts. This just came out several hours ago from Jerome Powell, essentially saying that conditions may warrant rate cuts as he spoke at the SALT conference in Wyoming. So pretty interesting there. We'll have to see kind of what happens and if the alt market can sustain a move up, or if this is just going to be kind of a short-term little bounce and then we start to see the market kind of bleed away. You could see something similar happening here. Even just yesterday is what it looks like. About several hours back, you could see a really strong move to the upside, and then it kind of bled down back to this level of support. So we'll have to see here. Of course, the good news being is we did actually break through this level of resistance that we had been rejected by multiple times. So as long as we can continue to hold this level of support, ideally coming back, seeing a break or a retest and a bounce would be good. Or even if we continue straight up through and seeing a similar type of bounce and retest, that would be fantastic. But hopefully you can see just how strong of a trade the Aerodrome has been so far and why I think it'll continue. And we're actually going to get into that right now. Here you could see there is an X post from Aerodrome. You can see Epoch 103 recap. Aerodrome reaches its highest volume week in the last 6 months as the Coinbase DEX rollout continues, now available to 5% of Coinbase users. And then, of course, you can see here 5.8 billion in total volume, 4.53 distributed, or 4.53 million distributed in voting rewards, and then 4.66 million in swap fees. So again, massive volume coming here. The important thing here is, of course, what I've highlighted, now available to 5%. So the rollout is continuing, and the rollout is, of course, starting to accelerate, but only a very, very tiny amount of people on Coinbase actually having access to the DEX rollout thus far. So this is a massive thing that we want to keep a very, very close eye on here, because this is going to be very important as we continue to see this track, as we need to see how many people are actually using the DEXs. What does this do to Aerodrome volume? As you guys do know, Aerodrome is kind of like, they're the very largest player here within the Base ecosystem. Of course, there's PancakeSwap, there's Uniswap, all these types of large entrenched competitors, but Aerodrome is actually massively outcompeting all of them within the Base ecosystem. And of course, Coinbase is kind of like the flag bearer for the Base ecosystem. So Really impressive to see here. We'll have to see kind of how this goes over time. But the other thing I want to take a look at here is we can see that Aerodrome has done over 70 billion in volume to date, and Aerodrome is also the home of Coinbase assets on Base. Now this is really important here because you can see you've got CB BTC, CB Doge, CB XRP, Litecoin, ADA ETH, all these types of things, and you can see that Coinbase wrapped assets bring the security and trust of Coinbase to the liquid staking market, which I do think that this is going to be a huge thing, particularly for some more kind of high volume or like high value traders and potentially even institutions. I think they are going to want the security and the trust of a large entrenched player like Coinbase. Obviously, they're a US company, they're audited, they're publicly traded. They have probably the strictest like kind of financial compliance conditions in all of crypto. And so I do think at this point, as regulation starts to come around and institutions start to come around, what has historically maybe been a little bit of a disadvantage for them is going to very quickly turn into a huge advantage. And of course, again, here we're seeing, you know, all of these Coinbase wrapped assets, you can move them quickly for cents, not dollars. They're custodied by Coinbase, and they're composable across all of DeFi. You can lend them on Aave or Moonwell, and then you can of course trade them, of course, on Aerodrome or PancakeSwap. So you can see PancakeSwap, of course, that one of the larger ones coming in here, but Aerodrome, as I've said, massively outcompeting some of these very large dexes. And so Aerodrome is kind of feeling, you know, kind of like the chosen winner for the Base ecosystem. Of course, you know, this is just my opinion. I don't have any substantive information to prove that at all. This is just kind of my opinion based on what we are seeing. I mean, if we look at the volume, if we look at the TVL is kind of lagging behind what we would normally expect, but volume is probably outperforming what we would normally expect. And we're seeing a whole bunch of different things going on here for Aerodrome, all of it looking really nice and really strong. So again, as I mentioned, we'll just have to kind of wait and see. What we are seeing right now is a little bit unusual given the kind of short-term and like news-driven nature of the pop that we have seen recently. I do still think that that doesn't change anything fundamentally that is happening with the Aerodrome trade. This is all related to Coinbase. This is all related to the DEX rollout to 120 million users now. That is what Coinbase has. So this is going to unlock a massive level of liquidity. It should be unlocking a massive level of volume. Of course, with that comes trading fees and all that type of good stuff. So I am really interested to see what goes on here. But this is huge news. Like I said, I think this is probably the most obvious and probably the most easiest momentum and like narrative trade that we are seeing right now happening within the crypto space. So of course you can make of that what you will. You can do your own research. You can, you know, do all of that type of stuff and decide if this is something that you might be interested in. You may agree, you may disagree. I don't actually know for sure, but you know, this is kind of how I'm seeing it, and I'm pretty excited by the prospects of what we're seeing here. So overall, as I mentioned, if you found the information in this video useful, you can like and subscribe. It does, of course, help me out. And then if you have any comments, questions, thoughts, feelings, whatever, just drop those in the comment section below. I do try to read and respond to all of those. You also can hit that notification bell if you are looking to stay updated with all things Aerodrome and anything else kind of pertaining to crypto or the altcoins within the crypto market, trying to keep up with all of the craziness that's happening kind of as we go through a wild time in the space of crypto. So as I mentioned, you know, like, subscribe, comment, do all that type of stuff if you feel so inclined. Otherwise, I will see you all in the next video. Thanks very much.